For the ladies specifically, what would you do if you suddenly became the popular girl in school, but it came with a lot of drama? Today's topic obviously is Mean Girls, which was a book originally written by Rosalind Wiseman titled Queen Bees and Wannabes, and it was adapted for the screen by Tina Fey. So the genre of this story kind of covers three main bases. It's a teen comedy, it's a coming-of-age story, and it's a high school drama. The themes it's dealing with is power dynamics, peer pressure, female rivalry, and a woman's kryptonite, which is accountability.
And I don't want to be punished for being well-liked. I'm sorry that people are so jealous of me, but I can't help it that I'm popular.
Before we begin, if you want to use any of these story structure tools that I'm using for this video, they are available for free in the description down below. And if you want more context about how to use these tools, there's a tutorial that comes along with it. But also, there is my book, Absolute Cinema Storytelling Techniques, which will provide a lot more context about different elements of a story so it can help you follow along or help you figure out what kind of story you want to create and how to stay focused so that you can avoid writer's block. So, Mean Girls. Every story needs a conflict, and a conflict, by the way, doesn't mean like an actual fight. I mean, conflict in its, final form is usually a fight, but a conflict can also just be an opposing force. So if me and you are having a discussion about a specific topic and we have a disagreement on the topic, that would be a form of conflict because the opposing ideas from me and you creates that, not tension, but just a conflicting nature in the conversation. So the conflict in Mean Girls is a juicy one. It is between Cady, Heron, and Regina George, our primary characters. But there's also kind of a third character in the conflict too, which is Janis Ian. And to simplify the conflict between these three, it is over the social hierarchy of this toxic girl world and for North Shore High. Now, Janis Ian isn't interested in the social hierarchy. She is not in the social hierarchy, but she is still interested in having an effect on this kingdom that Regina has built. Okay, so let's go ahead and get into the 3-act structure. So we'll use this structure first in the story circle structure to add depth to the narrative. Okay, so most of you know the 3-act structure is the most commonly used writing format for cinema, TV, series, just most of the things you see on screen. So it is split in 3 acts, acts 1, 2, and 3. That's why it's called 3-act, obviously. So in our first act here, we have the exposition. So in exposition, through the perspective of Cady, she starts a new life in public school. And if we want to add another note to this here, we are introduced to Janis, who introduces Cady to the world and the hierarchy of North Shore High. Now, the inciting incident for Cady is joining the popular girl clique in the Plastics. That is also the first major point of no return. Cady is invited to join the Plastics and agrees via Janis's encouragement. So that's how you would simplify the first act. The second act, which is where all of the juice of the story happens, begins with the rising action. So on our rising action here is navigating gossip and sabotaging friends. So Cady here plays both sides, sabotaging Regina with the help of Janis and elevating her way to the queen bee, eventually through that 4-way call, which really fractures the relationship. However, in doing that, she loses touch with Janis, who is one of her original friends. This leads us to our climax, where there is a lot of spreading of rumors, which causes school chaos. Now, the climax is triggered after Regina drops the burn book like a cheeseman nuke, and the school descends into chaos. Now in Act 3 here, we have our falling action, which is where Cady confesses and apologizes for her mistakes. We thicken this here by writing down that Cady owning up to her part in the burn book, spreading rumors about Miss Norbury, and joining the mathletes as a form of punishment. And the resolution here, by the end of the film, a lot of the cliques are broken up, but true friends will stick together. And the resolution comes as a result of the Spring Fling Queen speech given by Cady, where she shares the crown and shares a heartfelt moment and an authentic apology. She reconciles with Janis, and we see Junior Plastics on the rise, but everyone is in a better and neutral place. So if you wanted to simplify Mean Girls in 3 acts, this is how you would do it, and you can add a lot more details in the notes here. I just kept it as simple as possible for the sake of the example of this analysis. But when you're writing your story, a lot more ideas are going to be coming up and you're going to be thinking, where can this fit into this 3-act structure to help keep me on track when I'm writing my story? So don't think of this here example as you having to keep it this simple. You can still add more notes to this as you're going. I just put this here to kind of give you a general idea of how I would keep track of where my my story is going to go. Now, before we get into the next tool here, which is called the story circle structure, I just want to provide you with the breakdown so you can follow along once I get started on that. This is the Casey story circle structure, also known as the Estrada story circle structure. There are 8 steps in this process. 1. A character is introduced. 2. The desire. There is a want and or need. 3. Complication. Something and or someone is obstructing the desire. 4. React. The character engages with the complication. 5. Progress. The desire is either within reach, somewhat obtainable, or still worth pursuing. 6. Problem. The obstruction intensifies. 7. Action. A more extreme act must be made. 8. Change. The character and or those around him have been altered. So in summary, a character has a desire. However, there is a complication which causes him to react. The character makes progress until the complication becomes a bigger problem that forces him to take extreme action, influenced by the change that he has made through the journey. Okay, so story circle structure. We will begin with Cady Heron. So we are introduced to our character here, who is Cady. Cady is a fez from Africa. She's a fish out of water. She is the new girl. Now we get into this second slice of the pie here, is the desire. Cady's desire is to assimilate into high school. She wants to be liked. She wants to be popular. She's a regulation hottie. She's not going to have a problem making much of an assimilation into North Shore. Now 3 here is where we get our complication. She gets caught between friend groups. And these friend groups are Janis and Damien, which are the art freaks, and the plastics, the social hierarchy of the school. After this complication, Cady must react. So she plays both sides. She spies for Janis while also simultaneously becoming plastic. This then creates progress for her. And the progress is that she becomes the new popular girl. She is successful in sabotaging Regina to becoming the queen bee. She even quotes here, "I learned how to control everyone around me."
I think Cady's old enough to spend one night on her own.
I had learned how to control everyone around me.
That's another thing about these tools. If you are thinking of a line that fits a certain part of the narrative, just write it down, whether it's in this 3-act structure or in this story circle structure. Write it down in whatever part of the structure you feel that it would belong. All right, so from progress, we get a problem. Popularity comes with drama. So she went from being the queen bee to having the responsibilities of the queen bee, which comes with drama. And the drama here is the loss of self. She becomes inauthentic to the Cady that we know up to this point.
What does that smell?
Oh, Regina gave me some perfume.
You smell like a baby prostitute.
Thanks.
The consequences for this explode on her, those being the lies she tells about Miss Norbury, the rift that happens between her and Janis, though Janis is not completely innocent in this either because she kind of helped this happen, and ultimately this comes with Regina's wrath. So extreme action must be taken, and she must admit fault and repair her relationships. She takes punishment for the lie about Miss Norbury. She apologizes to everyone that she feels that she has wronged, and she shares the spring fling queen crown with everyone in the audience after this heartfelt speech that everyone took as an authentic apology, and she kind of restores her place, not really her social status, but just her place as no longer being outcasted by the rest of the school. Which leads us to our final point of the pie here, which is change. And the change that Cady makes is that she becomes a mature teenager. She breaks the cycle that was causing all this conflict within the North Shore High drama, and she makes real connections, or saves the real connections that she had made along the way. So that's how I would approach this if I'm trying to write a character like Cady in Mean Girls, or for whatever story I'm trying to create. I would establish where her story goes. So think of it in simple terms as possible. And remember, nothing is set in stone. Let's say you start thinking of things to add later, then add them later. And like I said, it doesn't have to be as simple as I've written it out here. If you want to add more here, or if you want to add more information here, you can add whatever you want. Don't think of it as simply as I've broken it down. I've just broken it down this way for the sake of showing you guys. So now what I want to share with you guys also is that the story circle structure is not just for one character. It's not even just for your main character. It can be used for the entire story, an individual act in the story, an individual scene in the story, and each individual character in your story. So this tool is very universal. You can create an entire web of story circle structures based on characters, scenes, acts, the entire plot, and kind of create this Charlie Day conspiracy thing before you even start writing. And when you do that, I guarantee you won't be lost when you're creating the full, whether it's a novel or a script. You won't get writer's block because you will have had this all figured out like the grand conspiracy theorist that you are. So having said that, let's get into the story circle structure for 2 other characters so you can see how you can start to create this web of a narrative conspiracy. So here we get Janis Ian, right? And how do we introduce Janis Ian? Okay, so step 1 here. First slice of the pie, we are introduced to Janis Ian, who is a social outcast. Her desire is seeking revenge on Regina. The complication is that Regina is too popular to attack, so her reaction is to use Cady as a spy. The progress is that Cady succeeds in destroying Regina's social standing. However, there's always a problem after the progress. The successful revenge leads to a rift between Janis and Cady. So though there was success in Janis Ian's revenge, the friend she made, she also lost. Because now she's like a clone of Regina. Cady has become a clone. Even in the words of her man candy, Aaron Samuels.
I wasn't...
God, you know what? You are just like a clone of Regina.
No, listen to me.
Her reaction to this loss is to point out Cady's fault and admit her own as well, where Janis basically acknowledges that while she did use Cady for her revenge, her and Regina both know they're mean. They are not in denial about how they behave.
You know what? You're the one who made me like this so you could use me for your 8th grade revenge. God, see, at least me and Regina George know we're mean.
And the change here happens after Cady's speech at the Spring Fling Queen, whatever you want to call it. So we go from this revenge to a reconciliation. And that is how I would simplify Janis's trajectory in this story. So before this, where we have Cady obviously being the main character, every character has an arc. And Cady's arc is kind of falls in 2 categories. She starts off has a negative change arc in the corruption category within the negative change arc because she becomes corrupted with her desires to assimilate and fit in and be popular. All of that kind of corrupts her and changes her behavior. But at a certain point, she takes accountability for her actions, and that creates the redemption arc. So Cady's story, or Cady's arc, is twofold. It's corruption, and then she redeems herself. Now, Janis's arc is a bit more of a disillusionment arc, where the truth that she comes to discover is not a comforting one, but it is a necessary one. Now let's get into our queen bee here, Regina, because you know that Regina has her own journey within this story as well. She's one of the key characters, obviously. She's the antagonist. All right, so we are introduced here first to Regina. She is the queen bee of North Shore High. We learn that she always gets what she wants. Her desire is to maintain her dominance over North Shore High. The complication comes from Cady, the new girl, who starts to rise in this social standing within North Shore High, and her interest in Aaron Samuels, who is Regina's ex-boyfriend, creates an even more dramatic conflict. It becomes a threat to her rising status. So she reacts. She seduces Aaron Samuels and uses him to manipulate and exclude Cady to keep power for herself. The progress made here is that Regina maintains the status quo, but Cady's popularity begins to rise. So this creates a problem for Regina, which then prompts her to release the burn book, causing havoc in the school. The action that Regina decides to take is to confront Cady. However, she is then struck by a bus. And the change here is a little different for Regina because she doesn't really change. Now, as far as the types of villains we can have in a story, Regina falls under the category that I like to call the bully. And if you want to know more about different types of categories of bullies, you can buy my book, Absolute Cinema Storytelling Techniques, which will go into a lot more different categories for several different types of bad guys to choose from. So Regina is the bully. Her character arc, while most characters go through a negative change arc, at least most villains go through a negative change arc, Regina's is a little bit different because she doesn't really change for the worse. She's a flat arc character, otherwise known as a steadfast. So her behavior doesn't change. She's still very bossy, but she just finds a new place to channel that bossy energy into, which is joining the lacrosse team. So those are the 3 story circle structures for our 3 main characters in the film. You could create story circle structures for every character in your film if you really wanted to. It's not necessary, but it definitely is not going to hurt you to be that much more narratively prepared before you start writing out your script and what's going to happen with everyone and what everyone even has to do with the overall plot of the story. Speaking of other characters, I do want to kind of lightly touch on some other characters who, I mean, obviously I wasn't going to do a story circle structure for everyone, but I still want to discuss about some characters who, although some of them may be having a bigger role than others, they're still important to the narrative. So I just wanted to kind of acknowledge some of them and just talk about their impact on the story in general. The first character I want to talk about is Cady's dad, who we don't know his name other than Dad. If he has a name, I don't remember what it is. Cady's dad. He is completely missing in the 2024 remake, but what I do like about him in the original film, even though they kind of still play this Hollywood trope of dumb dad, like he doesn't understand what grounded means, he does play a pivotal role in a very important moment in Cady's conflict in the film. After everyone has turned their backs on her because of what happened with the burn book and Regina getting hit by a bus, Cady explains to her dad that, like in Africa, when they seen lions tearing apart the warthog, that she was now going to become the warthog. And her dad reminds her, "You're not a warthog. You're a lion." So it is just kind of heartwarming to see, at least during this era, that a father was given a respectable moment in the film. He wasn't just portrayed as dumb dad. The next character here really should have her own story circle structure, but for the sake of time, I'm just going to try to sum it up as simply as I can here. Gretchen Wieners. Gretchen Wieners plays a pivotal role in this story. She is the keeper of secrets. As Damien says, that's why her hair is so big, it's full of secrets.
That's why her hair is so big, it's full of secrets.
She also provided us with this great meme of stabbing Caesar. Everyone knows the "we should totally stab Caesar" line, and the result of that is just everything that has been built up to, all the resentment that she has due to the betrayal she feels from Regina. She still wants to be very much liked by Regina, but Regina treats her like a doormat. And as Janis points out, that in order to take down Regina, they have to dismantle the army of skanks. And since Gretchen is the keeper of secrets, she is a perfect narrative tool for creating a crack within the plastics. Our next key character here isn't that big. I just wanted to mention him because he is the only character to appear in all 3 films. He appears in the first Mean Girls 2, and in the remake, and that is Tim Meadows as Mr. Duvall, the principal of North Shore High. Now his role, while it is important, he doesn't have a incredibly narrative impact. He's more of a vehicle for the plot. I just feel bad for him to see him in all 3 films. And it's one of those things where you understand he's an actor and he's just trying to stay actively working in Hollywood. But at the same time, you just think, Tim, you deserve so much better than just being the cartoonish principal of North Shore High. Now, this next character is pretty hilarious because he is kind of a side quest, comic relief side story of the film, but he actually plays a much more important part of the film than you would think, and that is Coach Carr. You could edit the entire timeline of Coach Carr's story into a short film and it could stand on its own as its own story.
Guess I'll never know what I missed on that first day of health class.
Don't have sex, because you will get pregnant and die. Okay, everybody take some rubbers.
Coach Carr?
Trang Pak?
Is this true? Trang Pak made out with Coach Carr?
At your age, you're going to be having a lot of urges. You're going to want to take off your clothes and touch each other. But if you do touch each other, you will get chlamydia and die.
Trang Pak made out with Coach Carr? And so did Sun Jin Din.
I pulled these 2 off each other. Coach Carr, step away from the underage girls. Coach Carr has fled school property. Miss Norbury's been accused of selling drugs.
Mr. Duvall, this is ridiculous. Ms. Norbury does not sell drugs.
I know, Aaron. But after the allegations against Coach Carr turned out to be extremely true, the school board felt that it was best that we investigate every claim made in this burn book.
Mr. Duvall, I wrote it.
Come on, Cady.
But when you include it into Mean Girls, it really does add an important impact to the narrative of the film. It creates more depth to this world, and it is also relevant to the story. It's not just comic relief. It is actually very much relevant and creates an important moment for Cady. Because Cady writes this lie about Miss Norbury in the book, calling her a drug pusher, and because this book is filled with chisme about a bunch of the girls in the school, and two of the girls are these hot Asian girls, one of them being rumored to have been hooking up with Coach Carr, it then creates legitimacy to the claim that Miss Norbury is a drug pusher, which then prompts an investigation into Miss Norbury, which the claim about Miss Norbury was a lie. But because when Coach Carr is confronted by Mr. Duvall about step away from the underage girls, when that turns out to be true, it forces them to take all the claims in the book as credible until proven otherwise. And if that hadn't happened, if Coach Carr's story was not involved in the main plot, we wouldn't have put Cady in a situation where she had to address what she wrote about Miss Norbury. So if it hadn't been for Coach Carr hooking up with those hot Asians, Cady wouldn't have been able to address what she did. And so that's why I think Coach Carr is actually a pretty important character in the story. All right, now let's return to the final character that I want to talk about in this story, and that is Aaron Samuels. Now, Aaron Samuels here is caught in this love triangle between Regina George and Cady Heron. His relationship with the girls is a subplot, which fuels jealousy and sabotage amongst both of them. That serves as a complication and a catalyst for the main social conflict. So initially, we understand that there is an attraction between Cady and Aaron. Cady obviously sees him as the man candy that he is recognized as throughout all of North Shore. And her interest in him is genuine. She has a genuine interest here from Cady. That is going to create a problem for Regina. So we have now here this relationship happening between Regina and Aaron, which they already have a former relationship that we learned through some backstory. So Regina here sees the attraction between Aaron and Cady as a threat to her social status. That prompts her to seduce Aaron Samuels to spite Cady. And that's what connects these two in this triangle here. It is genuine interest over a threat. Cady here has a genuine interest in Aaron Samuels, whereas Regina, it just has an interest in her own social standing. It's one of those things where like, if she can't have him, no one can. So that is a perfect way to add a relationship into a film. It should have some kind of narrative impact. And again, sorry to do this to you guys, I just got to do it. In Absolute Cinema, there is also an entire chapter about love triangles. So as long as it advances the plot and it's not just for the sake of having a love story, because it used to be that love stories were pretty common in films and sometimes they didn't really work out. It just, not that they didn't work out, they just didn't make sense. Like maybe they wrote the story in a way where the relationship is happily ever after, but the relationship didn't really play a pivotal role in the overall narrative. So when you introduce a relationship into a story, it should propel the narrative in some way. The next thing I want to cover is the world building of Mean Girls. We have the rules of Girl World. And as Cady says, Girl World has a lot of rules. What to wear and when you can wear it, how fighting had to be sneaky, Halloween is made for sluts, amongst the many other things that come up in the film. Now, it's important to establish rules in your story and what happens if you break or follow the rules. When you kind of just have no rules in a story, you don't even have to establish the rules. No, it's not like you have to, in every film, these are the rules of Girl World, or these are the rules of Boy World, or these are the rules of the Mad Max world, or whatever world it is that you're building. It's not that you have to state exactly what are the rules of the world. Through exposition, it should be established what is possible within this world and what happens when you make a choice or take an action that causes problems within this world. The Burn Book is another great addition to the world building of this story. It is, after all, what creates the climactic moment of all these cat fights when the girls go wild. It's a cultural symbol of Girl World. It's like a chisme dossier. The secrets that are within this document, when revealed, cause all of the chaos and the drama. So it's more than a cool prop. It is vital to the story. And another important thing about a story is creating points of no return. There are many points of no return in Mean Girls, and I will just touch on a few, because if I had to touch on all of them, this video would just be way too long. Let's go over the first two, which is when Cady first skips class to hang out with Janis. And the reason she does this is because she's not in a place where she has an opportunity to just pass up friends. She wants to assimilate into high school, right? So she wants to build this relationship with Janis and Damien. And while doing so, this also gives an opportunity for us to learn about the plastics, because this PE class begins weekends, and the plastics are all in the class together, which gives Janis the opportunity to provide exposition to us and Cady, us the audience that being, about who these plastics are. And her description of these girls, you can tell there's an obvious negative connotation and there is some bad blood between Janis and Regina specifically. This is followed by our next point of no return after Janis introduces the world of North Shore to Cady, and Cady then comes across the plastics, and the plastics then invite her to join them for lunch for the rest of the week. And this is what causes that moment, the complication for Cady in her story circle structure, which is getting caught between friend groups, because now she's invited to hang out with the plastics who she was warned about by Janis. But Janis, seeing that she's being invited, sees this as an opportunity to get behind the scenes and figure out what's really going on behind the world of the plastics. Now, these other points of no return include Cady and her trying to establish this relationship with Aaron Samuels. So whether it's in class, or another one, which is kind of an important one, is when she sees him at soccer practice and she wants to go and approach him, but the plastics then arrive and tell her, hey, get in, we're going shopping. So now she's stuck in this moment where she has to decide, do I join the plastics or do I try to go and establish a bit more of rapport between me and Aaron? And she ultimately decides to go with the plastics. And this decision, it's immense Cady's commitment to helping Janis find out what goes on with the plastics. This next point of no return is probably the most important one, and it is the Jingle Bell Rock talent show. In this moment, we learn several things. One, it's kind of hilarious because we learned that Janis was the original choreographer for this sexy dance that they do via Damien.
Does it bother you that they still use your original choreography?
Shut up.
Damn.
What?
I'd rather see you out there shaking that thing.
The second is that we get a little bit more of the drama between Gretchen and Regina after she tries to pull off her fetch line after the talent show.
That is so fetch. Gretchen, stop trying to make fetch happen. It's not going to happen.
But the most important thing that happens at the Jingle Bell talent show is that Cady, her decision to start singing a cappella.
What a bright time, it's the right time to rock the night away. Jingle bell time is the swell time to go riding in a one-horse sleigh.
Because Gretchen accidentally interrupts the song by kicking the stereo. That's what gives Cady the opportunity to save the performance. And it is her decision, also knowing, as Janis told her earlier, that everyone in the English-speaking world knows that Jingle Bell Rock song.
You guys know that song?
Everybody in the English-speaking world knows that song.
They do it every year.
So because everyone knows the lyrics to the song, Cady begins to sing it and everyone in the stadium begins to sing along. She creates this interactive moment between her as the new girl in the plastics and the rest of the school to join her in this social moment. And that elevates her social status. So that Jingle Bell scene is very important because it serves several purposes to drive the narrative into a more dramatic direction. The final point of no return that I'll talk about, there are still a lot more, but just the final one I'll cover for now, is Cady's decision to take accountability for her part in the burn book. It is at this moment that her redemption arc begins. And so that's a point of no return. She decides, I'm going to own up to this. So that's like a positive point of no return. Now let's get into what makes Mean Girls really memorable, and that is a lot of the, I would say, quotable lines. It's become the most quotable film in cinema history. And Mean Girls even has a day of the year dedicated to the movie, which is October 3rd.
On October 3rd, he asked me what day it was.
It's October 3rd.
A lot of the iconic lines are, get in loser, we're going shopping, you can't sit with us, stop trying to make fetch happen, too gay to function, I'm not a regular mom, I'm a cool mom, the Glen COCO character. And it's funny because the Glen COCO character, I'm not even sure if we see his face. When we originally hear about this character is when Damien comes in to hand out the candy cane grams, and then he calls out Glen COCO.
Glen COCO? Fall for you, Glen COCO. You go, Glen COCO.
And we see Glen COCO, but we see his back. There is a scene later where, due to the seating chart and the same environment, I do believe that this character here might be Glen COCO, but I can't be sure. It's just so funny because we're not even really sure who Glen COCO is, but we know who Glen COCO is because of Mean Girls. Now, while we are unsure of who he might be physically, we are aware of his existence. This video is taking really long to edit. And as I was getting to this Glen COCO section, I had a realization, or a thought, that Glen COCO was getting 4 candy cane grams. That means that there was 4 ladies thirsty for Glen COCO. So this guy had some serious pull. I remember I did a photo shoot for a brand, and the shirt literally says his name, Glen COCO. I'm starting to wish that I was Glen COCO, because the man is like the unspoken sex symbol of Mean Girls. There was only 2 girls going after Aaron Samuels. There was 4 girls thirsty for Glen COCO. It's crazy. The next line here is pretty hilarious because it kind of makes no sense, but at the same time, it kind of does. I don't know, it's weird, but it's that line, I don't hate you because you're fat because I hate you.
I don't hate you because you're fat. You're fat because I hate you.
Like, what the hell does that even mean? It's funny also because you can substitute that word fat for anything. Like, I don't hate you because you're a simp. You're a simp because I hate you. And it's funny, and it doesn't even make sense why it's funny. It just is. Another line here that is pretty hilarious, and this is going to piss off a couple of people, but I mean, who cares, is the moment where Regina is crying to Gretchen and Karen about Aaron breaking up with her, and she says,
I gave him everything. I was half a virgin when I met him.
And it's just so funny because it kind of just cements the fact that whether you like this red pill stuff or not, that purity is a lot more valuable to a man than social status. A guy will take a car with some mileage on it, but no one wants to be like riding around on the village bicycle, if you know what I'm talking about. Another hilarious line is, I don't know what the teacher's name is, but she storms in and talks about, the girls have gone wild.
Quick, they've gone wild. The girls have gone wild.
It kind of just goes to show what has changed between 2004 and today, because if you grew up during that era, you'll know that seeing a pair of tits was like super rare in the early Y2K era. It's not like today where you just log on to Instagram or Twitter or whatever social media you're using and there's just like tits everywhere now. Before, it was a mission to see a pair of boobs, okay? I remember I was there 3,000 years ago. I wonder how that joke will age, because Girls Gone Wild, in 50 years, will people still understand that joke? Because that's the problem with comedy films, is that there are jokes that can be told within a certain time frame and you will understand it because you are living currently within that point in time. But when I watch comedies from the 70s, there are jokes that kind of go over my head because I wasn't alive during that era, so it doesn't really resonate with me. Not that I don't enjoy comedies from the 70s, it's just that there will be cultural references that I don't quite understand. The final moment I want to talk about that is, I would say, memorable or iconic to me personally. I don't know about you guys. If you feel this way, let me know in the comments down below. But it is the last song to play during the narrative part of Mean Girls, and it is the song Hasslin' On and On by The Orbital. This song was really big in the 90s, in the Y2K era. I just remember hearing it during that time. And it is used in a few films, Mean Girls being the one film I know it the best from. And there's just something about this song that feels perfect to end a story. I think it's just a combination of the melody, the beat, I guess the era that it came out in. It just kind of pulls at your heartstrings after being on this narrative and cinematic journey with a bunch of characters you've come to know and like. And sometimes it might even shed a tear. I don't know what it is. It just, for some reason, it just hits the spot. So the last thing I want to do here before we move on to Mean Girls 2 and the Mean Girls remake is a tier list of our original Mean Girls. All right, so this is how I'm going to break down which of these girls is the hottest Mean Girl. We'll start with Regina. Regina for me is an A tier. Now, Rachel McAdams is very beautiful. In other films, she would be an S tier for me. But in particularly for Mean Girls, she's A tier. Karen for me is B tier. I forget this actress's name, and I've seen her in quite a few films. And while she is attractive, to me personally, she's just not my type. So that's why I put her in the B tier category. Now we get to Gretchen Wieners here. Gretchen is S tier. She is the hottest Mean Girl. If you disagree with me, you're wrong, okay? She just is. Look at her. Just look at her, okay? Look at her. Jesus, give me a break at that Kit Kat bar. Now we get to our main character of the film, Cady Heron, played by Lindsay Lohan. Lindsay Lohan was one of the hottest things throughout the Y2K era. But for me personally, not just in Mean Girls, but in most of the other films she comes in, she just falls in the same category as Karen, where I can acknowledge that she is very attractive, but my personal preference, she just doesn't fit into it. Even in Freaky Friday, the 2 other girls in the band with her, I found those girls to be a lot more attractive than Lindsay Lohan. So that's just me. Sorry, that's how it goes. So now we're going to wrap wrap this up with the last girl here, which is Janis Ian. And Janis Ian is S tier, okay? I don't know what it is, but when I saw Janis Ian for the first time, I think it was just the desire to have a goth girl baddie. There's something about Janis Ian, her look is just, it suits me, okay? If I could have Janis and Gretchen at the same time, that would be a night to remember. Anyways, that's the tier list. If you disagree, you're wrong. All right, so let's wrap this up with the Mean Girls sequel and the Mean Girls remake. But before that, if you, any of you ladies that are watching this, have ever been caught up between friend groups and a revenge plot, because I know that this is a universal experience for women. All women have had this kind of mean girl experience to some degree or another. And like I said in the beginning of the video, these tools that I've used to create the story structure are available for free in the link in the description below. There's also more context about these tools in my book, Absolute Cinema Storytelling Techniques. So if you are an aspiring writer or you know someone who wants to become one, tell them about these tools, and maybe you or someone you know might write the next cultural zeitgeist on girl drama. The Mean Girls sequel and the Mean Girls remake have this one thing in common. They are both cringe-inducing and very hard to sit through. However, unlike the made-for-TV Mean Girls sequel, the Mean Girl remake is abysmal. It is torture. It is soul-crushing. The only other purpose I would use this film for is if I was waterboarding someone to get secrets out of them. And aside from the waterboarding, I would also play Mean Girls the remake in the background.
No, God! No, God, please, no! No!
Just to further add torment to whoever the victim is. Mean Girls 2, like I said, is obviously a made-for-TV film, so you can automatically expect that the quality is going to diminish exponentially. One of the most heartbreaking things about the Mean Girls remake is that Johnny Cage from the original Mortal Kombat is cast as the protagonist's dad. So when I see him and I think that's not a guy who belongs in Mean Girls, this is the guy from Mortal Kombat. What's he doing in the Mean Girls world? Another very tragic thing about Mean Girls 2 is that the only character to return from the original Mean Girls is Tim Meadows as Principal Mr. Duvall. North Shore High itself, while in name, is a completely different location. So it's kind of breaks the canon for me personally when the North Shore High that you become familiar with in the original Mean Girls is a totally different location in the sequel. So we're supposed to buy into that this is the same place when it's difficult because you can't just put the name on it and then put the same principle on it and think that we, the audience, are just going to buy into it. It just kind of breaks the world building from the first film. The performances from everybody, including Tim Meadows, which is again sad for Tim Meadows, is that the performances are all cartoonishly outlandish. Even Tim Meadows, his performance, he becomes a caricature of himself. Not really of himself, he just becomes cartoonishly different from the first film. He doesn't even seem recognizable other than it's his face and he has the same name. But his behavior is completely different. It's outlandish and it doesn't fit in. And that's again breaks the canon of what we know as the world of Mean Girls. And the conflict in this sequel is also unrelatable. In the original Mean Girls, we have Regina and we have Janis, who we learn through their backstory they were once friends, but then there was some drama that happens between them, and so we understand why they're at odds. In the Mean Girls sequel, they try to do the same thing, but it's between two extremely rich girls, so it kind of just feels inconsequential, because it doesn't feel relatable. You just think a couple of rich girls who just don't get along, big deal. And the character who kind of takes the place of Janis feels even less interesting. She's probably the least interesting part of the Mean Girls sequel. And her relationship with the protagonist, because the protagonist also comes from out of state as opposed from out of the country. So she's new in town, but she's not from a completely different country. She's just from a different state or city or wherever she's from. She's still within America. So she's still somewhat new, but she's not as foreign as Cady was. I don't even remember the protagonist's name for the sequel, to be honest. But she was actually a pretty good looking girl. The thing though that doesn't really work though is that she is a very uninteresting character as well. She is this handyman boss girl that don't take no crap. She definitely has, I would say, premature boss babe energy from the current era.
Home ec's down the hall, miss.
Actually, as refreshingly sexist as that is, I'm here for advanced shop.
Oh, brother, this guy stinks!
So it's not amplified, but it's present. It's present enough to remind you of the girl boss problems we have in today's films. Not as bad, but still present enough to think this problem kind of began a long time ago. It just wasn't as amplified as it is today. I will say though, one of the funniest things that came out of Mean Girls 2 as the recreation of the Angry Arthur meme. I think that's the character's name, right? Anyways, that cartoon character who balls up his fist when he's pissed off. We get a kind of remake version, and I personally found that funny. So that was like the one moment that gave me a good laugh. Other than that though, all the points of no return in this film feel inconsequential because all of the characters are just very difficult to engage with. Also, they introduce a version of MySpace. So this was an early attempt to include social media into the plot of a film, but it's just not rewarding to watch people on social media in a movie. That's also a problem with the Mean Girls remake, but we'll get to that in a moment. Actually, let's just get into the Mean Girls remake. I've kind of said all I need to say about the sequel. Now, there are two major problems with the Mean Girl remake. The first is that it is a remake. Mean Girls really doesn't need the sequel, and it didn't need a remake either. So the sequel came out in 2011. So it's about 10 years away from the original. And the remake came out in 2024. So that's 20 years. So between 2004 and now, 20 years later, there isn't a lot of interesting change within the culture that would justify making a Mean Girls movie or a remake of a Mean Girls movie. It would be better to just make a film that kind of represents the modern girl world and call it something else. It would be better if there was a new film to really represent where the culture is at now, rather than trying to dig up a relic from the past and trying to make it fit in with the slight changes we've had as a society. Because the only things that are really different is social media. Other than that, a lot of the behavior between women and the social dynamics of girls manipulating each other and manipulating men. A lot of that is still the same. It's just that the tools have changed. And that in itself is not enough to really justify recreating Mean Girls. Now, another big problem with the remake here is the Mean Girls themselves. Now, in our original Mean Girls here to the left, they're in shape, they're sexy, they're who you would expect to be the popular girls in school. Whereas we look onto the right, these girls are all pretty much their big backs, they're chopped, compared to the original girls. They're just not hot. They don't have the same sex appeal. Now, if we take a further look into the actual original lineup of Mean Girls here, just the expressions on these girls' faces is a lot more confident. It's a lot more sexy. Versus when we look at the remake cast, these girls just do not have the same sex appeal. One, like I said, it's whether you like it or not, these girls are fat. And this girl, who is the Karen, tries a little too hard to look like an airhead. The Regina here, I'm sorry to say, she's chopped, okay? She doesn't have sex appeal, okay? There's no denying this. So you look at her, and then you look at the original Regina. This is a girl who is going to drive the dudes nuts. I would say that the Gretchen here is kind of, I would say, she's not attractive to me, but I would say out of all three, she is probably the least hard to look at. Also, too, the same problem as within the Mean Girls sequel is that the cartoonishly outlandish performances in this remake are just very hard to sit through. And because, I mean, for a long time, I didn't even know there was a Mean Girls musical happening at whatever theaters it happens at in America. I had no idea that this was a thing.
Let's take a walk around the cafeteria, shall we?
Yeah.
I'll show you the world as I see it. Varsity jocks and JV jocks will throw you in a locker if you say hello.
Oh, brother, this guy stinks!
And that's when I found out that Mean Girls has been a musical for however many years. And that's what makes it difficult to watch this remake, because we know the jokes from the original film, we know they know the jokes from the original film, and we know they know that we know the jokes from the original film, which is why when you're watching them trying to reenact certain scenes from the original...
Regina seems sweet.
Regina George is not sweet. She's a scum-sucking road horse. She ruined my life.
She's fabulous, but she's evil.
I don't really get why you guys hate them so much. Regina seems kind of cool.
Regina George is not cool. She's a scum-sucking life ruiner.
Why do you hate her?
What do you mean?
Regina, you seem to really hate her.
Yes. What's your question?
Well, my question is, why?
Regina started this rumor that Janis...
Damien!
Shall we not?
Janis hates Regina because when we were in 6th grade, she told everybody that she was... What?
Shall we not?
Oh. Hey! Why are you dressed so scary?
It's Halloween.
Why are you dressed so scary?
It's Halloween.
You're wearing sweatpants. It's Monday.
So?
So that's against the rules, and you can't sit with us.
Whatever. Those rules aren't real.
They were real that day I wore a vest.
Because that vest was disgusting.
You can't sit with us!
I'm sorry, Regina. You can't sit with us.
What?
You're wearing sweatpants. It's Thursday.
Whatever, those rules aren't real.
They were real that day I wore a vest.
Yeah, because that vest was disgusting.
You can't sit with us!
You know what? It's not my fault you're like in love with me or something. What?
Oh, no, she did not.
See?
It's not my fault you're like obsessed with me or something. What?
Oh, no, she didn't.
It just doesn't hit the same because it's not original. They're not as charismatic as the actresses from the original. And these are actresses who are more built for theater. They need to stay in the theater realm and let the cinema realm be the cinema realm. Even watching Tina Fey and Tim Meadows re-perform their roles from the original and try to redo the jokes from the original, it's just kind of sad to see.
Well, I just wanted to let everyone know that we have a new student joining us. She just moved here all the way from Africa.
Welcome. I'm from Michigan.
Great.
You may notice we have a new student joining us today. She just moved here from Kentucky.
Kenya.
Kenya. Her name is Cady. Cady Heron. Where are you, Cady?
That's me. It's pronounced like Cady.
Her name is Cady.
It's Cady. Cady Heron.
My apologies. I will commit that to memory. My apologies. I have a nephew named Anthony, and I know how mad he gets when I call him Anthony. Almost as mad as I get when I think about the fact that my sister named him Anthony. KD, like the Canadian songstress KD Lang, and Heron, like the illegal street drug.
It's sad and it sucks. I had to stop again here in the editing room because as I was looking for images to use, I came across this promotional image for the Mean Girls remake. And it is even an inside joke within the remake of how Tim Meadows has been around this franchise for so long. Look here at the image of him in the burn book. It says, "Oh my God, he's still here." The inside joke is no longer inside joke. Everyone knows this guy is the veteran of the franchise. And for those of you people who like musicals, it's hard to sit through. It is my belief that musicals are not really that big of a genre as the people who are into them think they are. Most people do not want to sit through a musical. There are very few that are very good. A lot of the animated Disney films would fall into that category of a musical that I would sit through and enjoy. But for the most part, I just can't sit through a musical. They are very cringe-inducing. I guess I would say School of Rock is also a type of musical, but not in the traditional sense. There's still a lot more narrative fun happening in that film as opposed to your traditional musical. Again, like the sequel, Mean Girls 2, in the Mean Girls remake, they really tried to have social media take a bigger part in the world of Mean Girls. And again, it just disengages me from the story. It's very hard to make a film using social media as a plot driver because a lot of us were all on social media already every day. So the last thing I want to do is sit and watch a movie of other people on social media. Another thing too, the problem with this being a musical is that one of the most important scenes, as I discussed earlier, is the Jingle Bell Rock talent show scene. That scene really stood out because it was unique. It was the only scene in the film that was kind of a musical. In the Mean Girls remake, which is a musical, it doesn't stand out because every other scene there's a song. So by the time we get to Jingle Bell Rock, it's lost its uniqueness. There's nothing special about it anymore. We know that in a few scenes later, or in the next scene, there's going to be another song. So why do I care now that they're getting to this Jingle Bell Rock song? And they kind of changed a little bit of the narrative direction that happens in the Jingle Bell Rock scene in the remake, but it still isn't interesting. No matter what they tried to do, it was never going to have the same uniqueness because the entire film is a musical. The biggest struggle I had with the Mean Girls remake is that I could only watch it for a half an hour at a time. So it took me 4 days to watch this film because I would get a half hour in and I had to stop. It was too cringe-inducing. So the next day I tried to pick up, see if I can continue the rest of the film, only get about a half an hour in. And so 4 days later, I was able to finish the film. That's how bad it is. Can you imagine if the Mean Girls remake came out first? That would have been awful. We wouldn't even be here talking about it. While Mean Girls 2, the made-for-TV movie, was bad, it was not as bad as Mean Girls remake where it takes you 4 days to finish. To summarize my feelings on the remake, it is so gay that even gay people get secondhand embarrassment from it. It is literally too gay to function. But anyways, we'll wrap it up here. Again, like I said, if you want any of those storytelling tools, they are available for free in the description. Also, more context about the tools and just storytelling in general is available in my book, Absolute Cinema Storytelling Techniques. This is good not just for writers, but also even for actors and actresses. If you just want to know what to expect from a writer or a director and understand more of what we might be thinking when we're expecting a performance from an actor, this kind of help you too to think about momentum, points of no return, conflict, just all these things that make a story story rich and give it depth, the more you know about it and the more you kind of understand what the director and the writer might be thinking, the more it might be easier for you on set as well. And even if you're just a fan of film, let's say you want to start a YouTube channel and you want to understand what makes a story good and how would I break one down, right here is your answer. So thanks for tuning in, and I hope you enjoyed this episode. I'll see you on the next one.